Prime Minister Justin Trudeau likes to say, diversity is our strength. Is it? What does he mean when he says that? And does diversity strengthen or diminish democracy? The answer is complicated. It starts with an open invitation to full participation in citizenship and a collective willingness to do the necessary work. Work that includes ongoing discussions about overarching values, ideals, and goals, such as human rights, justice, equality, individual freedom, and access to opportunity. Lost in the discussions pertaining to immigration and the acceptance of refugees is the responsibility those of us who are already here have to enlighten, inform, and educate newcomers about what is expected of them as participants in society. Together, and from within individual communities, we, yes, the royal we, need to share what is expected of citizens and landed immigrants, what it means to participate in democracy, what it means to be an informed voter. So, how are we doing? Well, Canada grants full access to participation. This we do well. And we say we believe in diversity, but we can't stop there. We need to do a better job of educating and demonstrating that for our democracy to strengthen, everyone must embrace one another's rights, and we must defend each other's rights. If I have the freedom to express my opinion, then I have an obligation to defend your right to do the same, and so on. Martin Luther King, writing from his jail cell in Birmingham, Alabama, said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied up in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is reciprocity." The Center for Multicultural Education at the University of Washington in Seattle established a Diversity, Citizenship, and Global Education Consensus Panel. The panel's goal was to develop and set a designed set of principles and concepts to develop and renew citizenship education programs that reflect both diversity and unity and that prepare people to become effective citizens in a global context. We invited Zool Suleman, an immigration policy consultant and a powerful civil rights champion for immigrants and refugees, to join us for a conversation that matters about unity in diversity.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Center for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
In this segment, we're talking about how diversity strengthens democracy. Since 9/11, there's somewhere between 150,000 and 300,000 people, the numbers are increasing year over year, that are coming here. So that puts us 2.5 million people who have come to Canada. And we have a responsibility to help them integrate into Canadian society. Let's start with you telling me how you got here and what's that support, and why then, after we discuss that, is that support vital if we want people to be complete participants in this country that we call home?
I was born in Uganda. I was a part of a group of what were referred to as the Asians in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. In the 1970s, there was a coup, and this general who took power named Idi Amin, and he had this edict and basically gave 90 days to the Asians to get out of Uganda, and we were a part of that crew. Luckily, Canada accepted us, and I ended up in Vancouver. We lived in a country in Uganda where we were educated in English and we spoke English. And those language skills, whether they're English or French, can't be underestimated.
Right.
They're huge, and made a big difference in being able to establish and move forward.
That migration, which was a considerable number of people, really marked the change that Canadian immigration policy was going through and the way that we were shifting the nature of Canadian society by opening our arms to a much wider group of people from around the world and say, come and join us.
It did, and I mean, more realistically, there was a change in immigration policy in the late 60s, and it became much more related to the point system, whether you had the appropriate skills and abilities to settle here, and much less based on racial discrimination and geographic discrimination. So since the late 60s, the demographics of Canadian immigration have substantially changed. In a way, they became what one would refer to as quote-unquote colorblind and much more focused on skills and attributes.
It starts to change the makeup of Canadian society. There's no doubt about it. Yes. We're now, a couple generations later, and Mr. Trudeau's son is the Prime Minister, and he says diversity is our strength. Why is it our strength?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the manner in which he phrases it. I think it is a strength, but I think in many ways it's a branding exercise by our Prime Minister, with all due respect. Having said that, and I think we also need to be careful in not over-valorizing ourselves as Canadians, in the sense that sometimes we hold on to these things that make us feel good about us as a nation state, and there are problems with the way we function. But having said all of that, given the choice that the country of Canada has made to be diverse in terms of bringing in communities, the Multiculturalism Act, things like that, it is a significant strength, because in a way Canada is an ongoing experiment. And as the experiment is going on, what we're seeing is what's working and not working. And I think the fault lines which are developing are around what can we embrace in kind of a Western, democratic, largely neoliberal, kind of globalized order, and what can we not accept within these frameworks.
Is not democracy, though, a statement about saying, I want to figure out how to get along?
Well, democracy is a statement, I think, about each person having a say equally and fairly. But the kind of democracy we've chosen is who has the say. And so whether you are a farmer from India, or a refugee from Asia, or a refugee from Africa, whether you're a brain surgeon or you are not literate at all, once you come to Canada and once you gain the right to vote, we have decided as a democracy that all these voices will get to speak. And the challenge is how to value them all for what they are.
By having diversity, it really does test what are those overarching concepts, ideas, values, vision of what a society is. And part of that is a commitment to human rights and equality and access to opportunity, the right to practice our own religion. And if I want to have the right to practice my religion, it means then that I have an obligation to defend your right to practice your religion.
I think you've nailed where the divide is. Now the rest of Canada is now trying to figure out, where do we go with this discussion? What can we embrace? What can we not embrace? And those are the fault lines of our democracy. And so my comment to you would be that I think we need to be careful about this rubric of diversity, because what does that really mean? When we talk about diverse, what do we mean? Because it encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses issues of race. Okay, gender. It encompasses gender, exactly, sexual orientation. It also deals with, when we speak about diversity, are we talking about the settlers who came here, or Indigenous communities, which are very much in ascendancy right now as we speak? So there is this big kind of series of voices that are speaking. And I think that's why I said earlier on, we need to be very careful about how the Prime Minister says diversity is our strength, because largely I don't know what he means.
Well, it would help if he would define it.
But he won't. And no. I think as a politician, he won't define it, as many don't. Because it's easy to embrace and say diversity is our strength, but the hard work of it is what is happening with the niqab ban in Quebec as we speak. The hard work of it is what is happening with Trinity Western University's arguments that they should be able to teach and give out a law degree under their conditions. The nub of it is what is happening with Indigenous communities that are saying that we have been here, this is our land, and we have our own ways of dealing with democratic engagement. So I think I appreciate the framework of our discussion, but all it really does for me is lead to an unwinding. And the unwinding is very complex. To get back to the core issue of what we're talking about, which is migration and democracy in the cauldron of Canada, right? Migration is happening. Democracy is the mode in which we function. I think what we're seeing are some of the positives of that, which in some of these suburban areas, there's a great deal of engagement, but not over the same issues that might play out in Vancouver.
Okay.
And not over the same issues that are playing out in Mississauga, are not the same issues that are playing out in St. John's, Newfoundland, or playing out in Fredericton.
But that's the nature of Canada.
It is.
Like there's no getting away from that.
But the federal government's message, however, is a uniform, homogeneous message. Diversity is our strength.
Right.
But how that diversity manifests on the ground is varied and in many ways contentious.
So one of the things that we do in Canada, and I think we do it well, is that when somebody is granted access to come here as an immigrant or as a refugee, and they go through that process of becoming a citizen, they are given full rights of citizenship. Yeah. You are a Canadian. Whereas in some European countries, you don't ever get that. You are a hyphenated Belgian, or sure. and you don't have the same rights of access, and this creates a divide. So then, how then can you have the a society that buys into an overarching set of values?
I mean, we've learned a lot. If you look at Germany in the post-war period and the Turkish question.
Yes.
Okay. Many individuals from Turkey went to work in Germany, in rebuilding Germany, and in the periods after that. And those Turkish nationals could not get German citizenship, despite being there for generations and having children born there. And what did Germany discover at the end of all that? That this is a mess.
We have a divided society.
Exactly, yeah. And that we need to give citizenship. So citizenship can be very ameliorative. It can deal with problems, but then it creates more problems, because then the question becomes, so what does it mean to be a citizen? So Canadians, permanent residents, if they stay here long enough, have to write a citizenship exam. Yes. They have to be somewhat functional in English or French. And when they write that citizenship exam, what do they learn? They learn that they have the rights of democracy, they have access to a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Constitution. So this is what they're learning, okay? And so my comment really is that what we're now starting to see is what each one of those rights means as we're moving forward. Because our notions of what they used to mean are evolving. When you say the right to vote,
yes,
okay, that means that you understand hopefully what you're voting for. You can get to a voting station, you know how to exercise your vote. But then we start to see people are saying, hold it, votes are being packed, false memberships are occurring, issues are being skewed. And so then you start to say, well, is this the engaged democracy we want? And some people would say, yes, this is old-style democracy, this is how it works. And there are other people saying, hold it, we have people voting who may not fully understand what they're voting for. So then do we need an informed citizenry? Yes, we do. And these discussions are a part of that process.
So what is it that we need to do to arm people who are coming to Canada with the insight and information that they need to become fully engaged?
I think it's a complex basket of things. I think the word engaged is very good. I mean, I think we do need to actually recognize that we need to engage with these individuals, whether they're refugees or skilled workers or business people. I think we also need to inform. What are the set of rights that they're buying into? What are their rights as citizens, their constitutional rights?
So this is a natural point for me to say, we had Zarmina Ali, who is an Afghanistan refugee or Afghani refugee who came to Canada before the events of 9/11, not much before it, but she was fleeing the violence in her home country. She came here and she wasn't given the kind of information that we're talking about right now. So I'm going to take a quick break right now. We'll come back with that, and then I'll come back to you in the following segment. What were the events that led you to
leave my country and come to Canada?
Yes.
I had a very happy, beautiful life with my 3 children and my husband. But unfortunately, my husband went for shopping, and unfortunately, he came back. He was injured because it was a big explosion bomb inside the city. He had internal bleeding and he couldn't make it.
You then decided that staying put would put your life and that of your family in jeopardy.
My eldest daughter was 8 years old. She knew everything at that time, and the reason that I left my country because she was scared of dying.
So you arrive here. You are a gynecologist by training.
When I came to Canada in the beginning, I was thinking about going back to school and do my practice. If I can, like, to become a gynecologist, even if I can't to be, like, if I cannot go to school for becoming a gynecologist, at least a midwife or doula, nurse, whatever, yeah, to be in medical field. But at that time, wherever I went, they asked me go back to school. Like, I thought they meant go back to school to finish your grade 12. But unfortunately, I went back to school. I started it from grade 9, then I finished my grade 12. And also, I didn't know that I was supposed to do my credential evaluation about my diploma that I got it back home. Like, I had MD, and also I had that certificate about my specialist, like gynecologist. But I didn't know.
So what did you wind up doing with your medical credentials? Did you eventually get?
No, not
No?
yet, no. Yes, of course, that the reason that I work with refugee women right now with PIRS, Pacific Immigrant Resources Society, just because that the process that I went through, I just wanted to let them know what to do, like especially for the people that they are well educated back home and come here. Like, I didn't do it. I didn't do the credential evaluation. The first step that if you want to go back to school is not like you have to go back to school and start from grade 10 or grade 8 or 9.
You're in a bit of misinformation there.
Yeah, it was misinformation. That just that one, and otherwise, no.
So as we can see from her story, she wasn't given, you know, those pieces of information that armed her appropriately, where she would then be able to be a part of the medical community because she was a trained gynecologist, and we kind of miss out. And when that happens, what happens to us as a whole?
No, it's a huge personal tragedy when you hear these kinds of stories, about the brain surgeon who's driving a taxi. There actually was a study done of how many PhDs drive taxis, and it's a larger number than we would like. So what happens is there's a personal tragedy that goes on. The person can't feel fulfilled and contribute and move on with their lives. But there's also kind of a larger communal deficit that's going on, in that we can't take advantage of those skills. People are underemployed, and also I think what it breeds is a massive disconnect in terms of the promises that were made and the life I'm living. And what that can do is not only make it feel like the country that embraced me didn't fully embrace me, and for the country it feels like, who is this immigrant who came in who didn't perform?
Right.
And a
Why
lot of
aren't
it,
they, Bob?
and
Yeah,
a lot of it is
yeah.
around this gap around how do you qualify? Can you qualify? What do you need to do? What can't you do? And this issue of skills mismatch has been going on since I started practicing law, and it's now been 25 years, and it was going on 25 years before that.
Right.
We're getting better, but these tragedies, I think, show us the losses that are accumulating.
Okay, but so coming to Canada then, if you go through the immigration process that you know is going to take 18, 24 months or so on, you have time to start to learn about the Canadian system, to learn some of those things that you need to have in place. And the Canadian government has the opportunity to share with you, here are things that you need to understand about Canada. For people such as yourself who said, no, you have 90 days, pack up your belongings or go. Or even worse, in Syria, barrel bombs are raining down from the sky above me. I need to flee. You don't have that. And so, you're coming under, forced circumstances, and you show up here.
I think, these are all great issues. So, for instance, if you're coming in under the normal streams of immigration now, certainly in the last decade, in fact, there is pre-counseling about Europe. You can about coming to Canada. You can, through our embassies and service providers, learn about Canada before you come, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
If you're coming in through these refugee streams or emergency or humanitarian streams, I agree, it's much more difficult to know what you're entering into. You just want to run away from the danger that you're fleeing and you want safety.
Right.
What I will say overall is that Canada, compared to many Western democracies, is doing a good job. Largely it is trying to engage with this diversity in the democratic process.
So how do we characterize how Canada has benefited by having, in the words of Jean Chrétien, this open-armed policy of saying, come and join us in the building of a truly blessed nation? is it working?
You know, it's a complicated question. If you said to me, did it work for me, my personal story, yes.
Yes.
It worked for me, and I'm eternally sort of grateful to Canada for what it did for me and my family. Is it working for other people? In some ways less so, in some ways more so. It continues to be this experiment. It certainly embraces refugees and people who are coming here purely on humanitarian reasons, and it also embraces very skilled people. Canada is an evolving project. It's a democracy that's trying to do something and not repeat the mistakes of Western Europe, not repeat the mistakes of the past. For that, I commend Canada for being brave. What I'm concerned about for Canada is its complacency sometimes in its journey, because it builds frameworks that are all-encompassing, that sound good, but that are hard to kind of fully hold on to. And so that's always the challenge between, I want to experiment, but I also want to tell myself a narrative that I can hold on to that makes me feel good.
About being a Canadian.
About, yeah, that
Yes.
diversity is great, and that diversity is without its challenges, and with the ribbon cutting and the backpacking that goes on. I think we need to be careful. And by this, I'm not trying to be an ungrateful refugee or an ungrateful Canadian.
No,
but what
I
I'm
think
trying to be is
yeah.
I'm trying to be a critically engaged person in saying that the kinds of stories we sell ourselves about our nationhood need to be explored.
Because if we're not ever vigilant about what the potential challenges are,
exactly.
then we're doomed to conflict.
Doomed to conflict, doomed to, I think, repeat them. And you know, if you say to me, what are the challenges? Migration is a challenge. Environment is a challenge. The indigenous moment in which we find ourselves, I would say by far, is a primary thing that we need to deal with, and we cannot afford to regress on that.
We need to address that wound in
Absolutely.
the Canadian psyche. There's no doubt about it.
And
Yeah.
I think the narratives we tell ourselves need to reflect these discussions, and that's the challenge.
I still hold on to the idea that we live in a truly blessed nation and that we are moving in a direction that I think can be an example for others on how to do this. But it's not without its problems.
Well,
Or
what
challenges.
I would say is that for me, the journey to Canada and being in Canada has been blessed for me and my family. And I think the more we have these kinds of conversations, the better we can improve our democracy.
Well, I agree with you. Thank you for doing
Thank you
this.
very much.
And of course, thank you for choosing Canada.
Thanks. Canada also chose me, so I'm very grateful.